Hello everyone and welcome to Inspiration Friday. I'm your host Mateo and this is the second episode for August. And last week we had Mets on in a live show. That was fun and something different. And I think we're going to have Dennis on I'm thinking about next week, but maybe the week after. He's back at work in London, so his time is quite a bit different than our time. I think about 5 hours difference, and trying to catch him when he comes home is a little complicated, but I think we'll work our schedules out. And I like the live conversation. It's a little more interesting instead of me just staring into the camera and talking to somebody I hope is out there watching. And anyway, this month we are discussing the origins of inspiration and where inspiration comes from. And I had a great conversation last week, and it got me to thinking more about where inspiration originates in our brains, and it triggered a memory of research that was being published and floating around in around 2008, 2009, and 2011. There's quite a bit of research that came out, but I think it sort of started with in 2008 with research done by Soon and Haynes and a couple others, and it was published in Nature Neuroscience magazine, and it was based on some research that was done in the 80s by Libet, and it kind of triggered a little bit of a controversy, mainly because people latched onto it in regular media instead of in the neuroscience research articles, and made the conclusion that somehow this proved that free will doesn't exist. And the research by Soon and Haynes, they put subjects in an MRI, and it was a live, I can't remember what kind of MRI machine it is, but it's one of the more advanced ones that showed what was going on in the brain as they were asking them questions, and they were supposed to make some task and choose between pushing a button with their left hand or right hand. And the research showed that there's activity that was happening in the brain sort of seconds, even up to 10 seconds before they actually made the choice of choosing to push the button with one hand or the other. And there's some subjectivity to about when the subjects were deciding, because they were the ones that decided when they consciously were choosing it. Don't know when that moment actually happened. And they used that as a gauge to when this part of the brain was being stimulated in the moments before they actually claimed to actually were making the decision consciously. Anyway, all this sort of stimulated this conversation amongst neuroscientists and philosophers and other people in brain-related psychology and sociology and all these other different fields about whether free will was being involved or not, and there's discussions about whether the subconscious was actually making decisions first. Conscious was sort of involved later, moments later, and I think you even remember reading or hearing something about one person saying that the subconscious makes the decisions and the consciousness rationalizes them later. Which, of course, none of this research really proves that. All I think it really does is it proves that part of the brain, the subconscious brain, is probably doing something, and then a decision's made. And making any kind of delineation between when the subconscious is making a decision and the conscious making a decision is really all semantic, because I don't think we have any kind of tool to even decide. I don't even think we know what the difference is between subconscious and conscious is yet. There's still discussions about and determinations about what that is. But anyways, all of this sort of is all floating around in my brain, subconscious and conscious, and made me think about this research and how inspiration somehow is involved in that, woven throughout that conversation, because that is part of our decision making, is when we have these epiphanies. The epiphanies come from and gut instincts and reflexes. I mean, sometimes we make this decision and feel like this feels right, right? This is the right one. This one feels wrong. And I think it is kind of important to have that discussion of where those things come from, where those feelings, instinctual reactions come from, opposed to a deliberate sit down, let's make a pro and con list, let's do some measurements, let's, decide if I'm going to buy the car, where should I buy it, how do we have the money, you actually look at the budget. Those are sort of concrete, conscious decision-making skills and tools, and that's obvious. We're making a conscious decision, but many times a lot of that is happening overlaid of a feeling we sort of already had. I mean, why did we decide to get a car? Was there a feeling like I wanted something new, I wanted something shiny, I wanted something because our neighbors have it, there are real life considerations, like we need something bigger because we have more children. We need something more economical because we don't have enough money to pay for all the gas we're using. And we're, starting to use our credit cards to live on from month to month. So there's this sort of, I don't think there's clear cut. You can make clear cut classifications of this is a conscious decision, this is a subconscious. I think both come into play. There's something much more holistic happening in every decision we make and every sort of feeling that we have. And that definitely plays into this discussion that I'm having this month about the origins of inspiration, the origins of ideas. Dennis and I had this epic, 3-4 hour conversation back in I was still in high school. He had graduated, so it was probably 1988. He was in college and away, and I was home missing him. And I don't remember who called whom, but we did have this deep philosophical conversations of the origins of creativity and ideas and where do they come from. And hopefully we can have a rehash of that conversation later this month. But I think it was very important, and it definitely was very influential in my intellectual and creative development, because I still think of it today. And this week, some major things happened for me. If you had been watching my Facebook, the Metz and Mateo Facebook and Instagram feeds recently, I just got some 26 frames that I had purchased and had put an order in several weeks ago. Showed up yesterday, and I just was completely inspired to work on this project that I started last year, but some of the images I'm using in this series of my hometown and here in Three Rivers go back to 1990, so literally 30 years old. Some of these negatives are, and I printed them starting last year and did quite a bit of it in January before everything closed down. And yes, I'm so excited because it looks like I might be going back to the darkroom in the fall. The KIA is open and they're having classes, and I feel confident that they're doing things now that this will be the second or third semester. I think spring was all virtual and summer was a hybrid, and fall will also be hybrid. They do as much online as they can, but with physical arts and crafts, you can't do them at home because not everyone has a kiln or a darkroom or welding equipment. So a lot of those physical material classes will be taking place again in the fall at the facility, and it sounds like they're doing a good job, working really hard at keeping everyone safe. but still having fun. And I really want to get back in the darkroom and do some more printing, because I got about 12 prints of this 20 some print series done, and I took rolls and rolls and rolls of film this summer around town and would like to really round out this set. But I did post one of the gazebo behind the O'Malley Law Office. It used to be, back in the 20s and 30s and maybe even to the 40s, Kellogg used to live in town, and one of their family members, the Kellogg family is based here in Battle Creek, for those who eat Kellogg cereal and know where it comes from. And one of the family, I don't remember how the family members are related, but lived here actually in town and had strawberry fields. And their house was across the street, a different street, from what is now an old O'Malley Law Office. And behind there was this rock garden with waterfall that was done for the wife, or the wife did it. I don't know the whole story. I really need to talk to the Historical Society. But anyway, there was a gazebo. I don't know how old the gazebo was. It had fallen down, it was rebuilt. And I took a picture of it in 1990, and is now gone. There's nothing left of it except for maybe the foundation, if you can find it underneath all the growth. And I love it. It's very mystical and mysterious and lost, secret garden kind of looking. And so I printed it, and it came out amazingly well, considering how little I knew of what I was doing with photography back then. And I'm so very happy. I quickly designed, I have this photo, you put a mat board on top of it. I had ideas, but hadn't yet designed the border for the mat board. But I did it last night, kind of all came together, and just kind of threw some things down and worked on it, and showed my brother, who's also an artist, and bounced some ideas off of him, and made some modifications, and just came up with something that worked. But I kind of want to wrap up about this research and why I'm bringing it up, and what this has to do with where inspiration comes from. And I think what it does is it points to this idea that ideas and thoughts and sort of feelings, which are all sort of based in neuroscience, come from sort of the subconscious. It moves its way into the conscious. This is, psychology and philosophy and science, all sort of neuroscience mixing together. But that, decisions sort of and inspiration originate in the subconscious, bubbles up sort of into the consciousness, and it's all sort of based on everything. It is who we are. All the experiences, all of the input that we had takes, it all takes part in where decisions are made and where inspiration happens and comes from. Okay, I'm back. I had a cookie and maybe two, and maybe some chocolate, because my blood sugar was crashing and my brain wasn't working anymore, and I couldn't think straight. And any of you who have diabetes or who have family members that do would recognize when your brain doesn't have sugar, it doesn't work. Anyways, I was talking about being inspired and was babbling on about creating this mat border and getting everything put together, and it was just a great week, and lots of inspiring things have happened. And just wanted to share with you how important I think it is that we consciously choose what we expose ourselves to, what and how we choose to program our mind. Because I believe that's really what we do. Everything we do every day, all of our experiences, we remember, and they go somewhere in our head, whether we can recall them or not. is another issue, but there is a theory that we actually do remember everything somewhere, and our subconscious uses all that information in the background to solve problems and make decisions and guide us through our lives. And I think this neuroresearch is slowly going to prove how important the subconscious is in our decisions that we make, even the ones that we think are made completely consciously. And I don't see any problem with that. It's still us, it's still ourselves. And I think that doesn't really have any bearing about this question of free will, because that's really, I believe, a philosophical question. And, I guess those questions do interest me more so when I was a teenager, but not so much as an adult. I think I'm more of a pragmatist now. But again, back to this idea of programming, I think it's vitally important that we really consciously think about the things that we expose ourselves to. If we spend all day long on the internet or watching television and we're exposing ourselves to sort of anger and violence and conflict and dissent, why would we be surprised if we're frightened, stressed, and depressed? As much as we need to be aware about and be a part of our external communities, I think it's even more important that we're aware and a part of our inner world, that we nourish and cultivate an external community that we want to be part of. But I don't think we can do that and ignore the internal. We have to nourish and heal and take care of our internal worlds as well, because that world is what informs the decisions and the creativity that we have. So I guess I'll just wrap up for today. If you liked the show, and sorry for my choppy brain. Sugar deprivation can do that, but I hope you got something valuable out of it, and share it with your friends and family if you think someone would benefit from watching this. And do some research yourself. There's quite a bit of information out there, and I think it's just interesting, at least for me. I'd like to know how things work, and when we're empowered with information like that, I think we just are better people and better stewards of our communities and ourselves. So, have a good night.